My name is
Jenny.
David.
Lila.
Laurel.
Jen.
Lisa.
Dino.
Hari.
Kyle.
I was a
Jehovah's Witness.
Jehovah's Witness.
FLDS.
In the Amish church.
The chosen people.
I was a Scientologist.
I grew up a Mooney, a member of the Unification Church.
2x2.
And I am
Shunned.
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 Stunned. Stunned.
Shunned.
My name is Carol Ann. I am 23 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
All right, Carol Ann. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I am a fourth generation witness. It goes back to my grandparents. They both came into it when they were kids, and then raised their kids, and by extension, me as a witness as well.
So do you have an origin story? Was there any family lore around how it all kicked off?
A little bit. My dad's side of the family were never witnesses, but I had no contact with him until about a year ago, so I didn't have any outside influence. My nana, I think, was like 4 or maybe 5 when somebody came to their door. I remember her telling me that it was like a little boy and his dad, and the little boy gave his presentation, and my great grandmother just loved it, just fell right for it. My nana was young at the time, and she ended up having 4 younger siblings. So they were all pretty much raised in it. And out of all of them, I think only one of them ever left. All of the rest of them are still witnesses and raised all of their kids to be as well.
So
And then
strong
my
family as far as being
Oh, yeah.
quote, in the truth, right?
Yes, I was constantly told about my spiritual heritage as a child.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then my grandpa, he had a really rough upbringing. His mom and dad got divorced when he was an infant, maybe like 2 or 3 years old. And his mom took his sister and his dad took him, and they didn't see each other again for years. And when he was in his early teens, I think somebody came to their door, and it was the same thing. He fell right into it. I think it gave him some structure that he really needed, and a family that he had never really had before. Just being on his own without his siblings or his mother, I think he needed that. And I think he was in his late teens, like maybe 16 or 17 when he was baptized. And my nana was 9 when she was baptized. She was very young.
Yeah, that's young.
Yeah.
9 years old. That's very young to make a forever commitment to a thing.
Yeah. And she's never wavered on it. She's still going strong.
Wow.
She's 72 now, and she's still in it.
It's been her whole life.
Yep, pretty much. And all of my family's whole lives, all of my great aunts and uncles and cousins and everybody. That was everyone's entire life.
So you mentioned earlier that your family would talk about their strong spiritual heritage or whatever. Did I put a lot of pressure on you? Did you when that was talked about, was it more, or I guess I should just ask, how was it talked about?
It was definitely a lot of pressure. My grandpa would tell me a lot, you're 4th generation, you're carrying on, the heritage and the legacy, and we're so proud of you for all these good things that you're doing. Well, I'm off doing my own thing without them knowing. But I was the only kid on that side of the family. My aunts never had children, and I was an only child until I was almost 15. So I felt like if I didn't stick with it and stay with it, then I'm killing that heritage. It would end with my mom.
Yeah, that is a lot of pressure, being the only kid and everything, to have all of that attention put on you. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Well, and everyone around me growing up were witnesses. There was no one that we spent time with that wasn't a witness. So that was all that I knew.
And if you were the only kid, then so would it be accurate to say that you spent time around adult witnesses a lot, particularly in the family, since there was nobody else, I guess, your age?
I did, and I spent a lot of time by myself too when I was a kid. Like I said, I have issues being social with new people, so I was content to just stay in my room and do my own thing. But we spent a lot of time with our family growing up. When we were in California, there were a few years where everybody lived together. Was my nana and grandpa and my aunt and uncle and my mom and I. We all lived in one house, so I got used to just being around everybody. And then when I was really young. I was probably 2 or 3. My nana and my grandpa got divorced, and he remarried and moved to Missouri from California.
Oh wow.
Mm.
But so they got divorced, and the witness heritage continued. I mean, as far as did they stay in
Yeah,
organization?
yeah. It was a what do you call it? A scriptural divorce.
Okay.
The elders didn't take any issue with it. And my nana never remarried. She's still single. She's said for years she's did it once and she never wants to do it again. And I don't blame her. But my grandpa did remarry an amazing woman. Her name was Grace, and she was with us for about 10 years before she passed. But she came into the witnesses as well. She started studying when she married my grandpa, and she got baptized I think in her early 50s. So she came into it later.
It's interesting how many times people come into the organization and there's some sort of a relationship, either
Hmm.
waiting for them or they get involved in a relationship or whatever.
Yeah,
Happens very often. People will study and become Jehovah's Witnesses at times just to marry a certain individual or be able to date even. So
yeah. There's some of that in the family too.
talk about pressure, right? I mean, if grown adults succumb to the pressure to become Jehovah's Witnesses just to date someone, how much more
Mhm.
pressure is on a kid growing up in it, being told, "Hey, you're fourth gen. You got to keep this heritage going."
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
so because you were around it so much, what was kind of the worldview that it gave you? I mean, you had this tight JW community around you. How did it make you see
Mhm.
the world outside?
I was terrified of the world outside. Everything was scary. I was told growing up that people are going to try to hurt you, and I was taught very early what to do if somebody tried to hurt me: bite and kick and scratch and scream. And so I was terrified of that every time I went outside. Um, and that us versus them mentality was very, very strong. Um, we I felt like I never had any outside influence at all. Even when I was at school, we're told not to make friends. And when I was little, I obeyed that. I stuck, to myself. There was one other witness kid in my class that I would hang out with sometimes, but other than that, I was pretty much on my own because I didn't trust anyone.
Um, so then, yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned class. So
Mhm.
uh, did you attend regular public schools, or were you one who ended up being homeschooled at some point?
At both. I was in public school until I was halfway through my sophomore year, which is about when my sister was born. I started homeschooling and taking care of her when I was 16.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So when you had you said sister, right?
Mhm.
You instantly or fairly instantly left school to take care of her?
Yeah, she was born in April of 2016, and I left school in December of that year. Um, it had already been encouraged by the people around us and my mom as well to finish up homeschool. I had already gotten in trouble a few times by that point, and I think they were worried about the influence that I was around in school, which
Okay.
is fair because I was doing stuff I shouldn't have been. But a big part of it was my sister. She was about 6 months old when I started homeschooling, and I took care of her until I left home. I would stay with her during the day and do my schoolwork, get her up in the morning, put her down for a nap. And sometimes when my mom and stepdad would get home, they would take her in their room, and sometimes she would stay out there with me. Just kind of depended on how they were feeling. But she spent most of her time the first year with me.
And we'll get into it more as we go. I mean, it is kind of sad though that the answer to my kid is, I don't know, doing something they're not supposed to do is, well, let's just deny them an education and take them out of
Yeah.
school.
Yep.
That's,
Yeah. Yeah. I did Penn Foster to finish up school, and it was just reading and then do a test. That was just over and over again, read and do a test. I got through it really quickly. I graduated a year earlier than I would have if I had been in public school, but I also missed out on the last 2 years of high school. I mean, I didn't see any of my friends again. I didn't have any opportunities to grow past high school.
well, sorry that you missed out on those things, but congratulations for at least doing it. Most people, a lot of Jehovah's Witness kids don't do their programs. They
Yeah.
go out in service or watch their sibling or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I was pioneering at that time, so I was still doing both.
Oh wow.
But my mom always encouraged education for me, not necessarily going to college, but she made sure that my grades were always up, and I was doing the things that I needed to do. I was doing my homework and projects and things like that. More so than my nana did. She would be proud of me for spiritual accomplishments, but my mom really valued my education.
Can I ask, when you were watching your sibling then? I mean, not to skip so far ahead, but I mean, we're there, so let's just talk about it for a second. When you were watching your sibling, so where were your, I guess, mom and stepdad at the time? Were they out working or something?
Yeah, my mom has worked full time for as long as I can remember. She When we were in Missouri, she was working two jobs. And there was a time there where I don't want to call him my stepdad. I'm gonna make up a name for him. It'll be John. John did not work for a long time. He was very ill for a while after Lily was born. So even when he was home, I still would get up with her in the morning and watch her while I did my schoolwork. And then when he did have an odd job for a few months, it was the same. They would both be working, so I would get up with her and take care of her. But it was rare that I didn't have her all day during the week.
It's, I I don't want to say an inordinate amount because I don't know. I don't know
Mhm.
statistically what any real numbers or comparisons would be, but anecdotally, I just heard a lot of stories, including my wife's, of the Jehovah's Witness kids that are kind of raising a sibling, and I don't know if that's because of the pressures that the cult puts parents under.
Yeah,
You also have people just trying to eke out a living, and they're encouraged not to put much into it. So I think it creates a lot of really weird situations. And then there's a lot of parents who are just super, super depressed. And
yeah,
so many stories of parents who don't even leave their room. And so you
yeah,
have a sibling caring for another sibling. Um,
yeah. Which
almost,
my mom struggled with that. Mental health problems run very, very strong in my family. My nana has struggled with them, and my mom, both of my aunts. And when my mom was home, she slept most of the time.
mm,
Which, looking back now, I can understand why, because she was working 50, 60 hour weeks and on her feet for that long or longer every week. She was exhausted. But when you're a kid, you don't really see that. You just see, your parents not there. And
well,
that
yeah.
was
I
something
mean,
we've had to work through between us as I've gotten older, because I can see it. I can see it now.
sure. It may not be intentionally neglectful, but it still
So it feels
creates
that way
that
when you're
same
a kid.
situation.
Yeah.
And it's just a tough scenario. And yeah, I mean, can you imagine working 50 to 60 hours, having kids, and having to go to meetings all week and prepare for them and the pressures of all of that. I just can't. I know. I mean, I was depressed as could be, and uh,
Mhm.
it was primarily just the witness part. I didn't even need. I didn't even have kids. I don't know how I would have done it with a
Right.
child.
Yep.
Just it's way too much. It's just so much. Um,
Well, and when we were living in California, my mom, she worked even more. She would work 80 hours a week at one job and part-time at Walmart after that. She would get me up for school at like 5, and I would go to it was like an AM PM after school before school program. And she would go to work, and then after school she'd pick me up and then keep working at home until she had to go to work at Walmart, and then she'd work there until 11:30, and then she'd log back on when she got home and keep working. And she told me she did that for 17 months without a day off at one point while we were living there.
Phew. You do what you gotta do to get by, right? But it's
Yeah.
sad that
Well,
that's the existence.
it is, and she wasn't just taking care of me; she was taking care of my nana as well. After she and my grandpa got divorced, my one of my aunts was living out there in California with her husband, and they did not help. When we were living with them in that big house, they decided they were going to split expenses 3 ways, and they would pay 1/3 of it, and my mom would pay the other 2/3 since she was taking care of my nana. And yeah, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. But we could barely get by out there.
Wow, that's brutal. I'm sitting here in my head trying to make that math work. That's
It makes no sense.
wow. Okay.
And my nana didn't work. She over the years, my grandpa and her owned different businesses that she would work at, and she's a seamstress by trade, so she would do alterations and things like that. But she never had a job that she put like Social Security into. So once they got divorced, she had no income, and they would not take care of her. So my mom and I took her in, and she really had the biggest hand in raising me, I think, because my mom worked so much. It was usually just me and my nana home.
Wow. I was just thinking, maybe if your nana had a social security income or something, if she had some sort of income, I could understand maybe expecting the 2/3 there because there was income. There were two individuals providing there, but wow, that's just uh, Jehovah's Witnesses do not treat one another very well a lot of times, and
Nope.
especially when money is involved,
Oh
it
yeah.
gets real sketchy.
Oh yeah. Well, and when my nana moved out there with us, she put all of her stuff in storage. She had two gigantic storage rooms full of stuff that my mom paid for, and she probably spent $50,000 over the years keeping that storage room for her. And my aunt and uncle would not help with it. It took us being gone for a few years for them to finally start paying for it. And when they did, they made her go in and sell most of it so that they wouldn't have to pay for it.
I mean, that unfortunately sounds about right. There's just
Yeah.
not a lot of love in Jehovah's loving organization. There really
No,
isn't.
there's
There's not a lot of empathy. Uh,
no, and with my family, everybody dislikes each other for some reason. No, there's no relationship in my family that's civil. So, there's a lot of animosity, especially between my aunts and my mom.
Must have been real fun when you all lived together and such.
It was great. Thankfully, I was too little to remember all of that. My mom and I and my nana got a place of our own when I was probably like 4, and that's really what I remember is living in the trailer with her.
Now, this is around where I would normally ask you to talk about a little bit about how you grew up and such, but I know that you want to talk a little bit about your mom's story kind of as I think a background to some of
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
I'll let you jump in wherever you feel that you would like to jump in.
Okay. Um, we can start with her baptism. She was baptized when she was 12. Not super young, but still pretty young. And then she was disfellowshipped for the first time at 13.
Ooh.
There was an older brother in the hall. He's about 10 years older than her, and he groomed her and assaulted her. And when the elders found out, they disfellowshipped her for it, and he did not face any repercussions.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And it wasn't the first time. She had been abused by a family member as well when she was very young, and the elders basically told them to just keep quiet about it. Just don't talk about it. Nothing else is going to happen. And he never faced any discipline either. She tried to get reinstated, I think, when she was 14, and the elders told her no. They told her what you did was so bad that you can't possibly be sorry, and refused to reinstate her, even though she had been coming to all the meetings and doing everything she was supposed to do. So she left at that point, as she didn't think that it was worth it. And then she married that older brother when she was 15, and he was 25. And abuse started very quickly. He started being very abusive right after they got married. When they got divorced, I think it was maybe a year or two later, the elders asked her why, and when she told them that he had been abusive, they did not believe her. And they refused to reinstate her again because they thought that she was lying to them. And it took the elders finding out that this man had been having an affair with another married sister in the hall before they would reinstate my mother. It took him being disfellowshipped for her to be able to come back, because they just refused to believe her.
Wow. Again, Jehovah's loving organization. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I mean, your mom was set up for abuse in so many ways, and then groomed by this guy who then continued the abuse as soon as he married her.
Yeah.
15?
15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wherever she lived, I assume maybe parents had to sign off on that.
Yeah. My nana and my grandpa signed off on it. I don't think they wanted to, but they did. But I mean, my mom dealt with a lot of abuse at home too. My nana was very physically abusive with my mom and my aunts. More my mom than either of my aunts. And she struggled with mental health issues. My grandpa broke his back when he was in his 20s, and after the surgery to fix that, he fell very deep into addiction. And he was addicted to prescription pills for almost the rest of his life until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, which made things very difficult on them growing up too. He also got physical with them, but more with my aunts than he did with my mom. I think both of them really had their favorites, and they showed it. It was very rough for them. And I think my mom just wanted to get out. And she did it again after she got divorced. She remarried, and he was also a very abusive person.
Of course.
Yeah, and she
You
found
just
herself
repeat the
there.
patterns.
Yeah. They separated, and during their separation, or maybe while they were still together, he started seeing someone else. And eventually my mom did too. While they were in the middle of their divorce, she met my dad. And when her soon-to-be ex-husband found out about my dad, he told the elders. And my mom had been inactive at that point for probably 2 years. And the elders hunted her down at her job to tell her that they were going to disfellowship her because she was seeing someone else. And she told them, he had already had this affair with this other woman, but she didn't have 2 witnesses to back her up, so they didn't care. and they disfellowshipped her again. And then she and my dad were together for about a year and a half. They never married. But again, it was another really rough relationship. There was a lot of fighting and a lot of leaving. My mom would leave and then come back and leave and come back. And when I was 7 or 8 weeks old, he told my mom get out, and she just never came back. And I never had any contact with my dad until a little over a year ago.
So I think that leaving and coming back, I think that's
Mhm.
a through line or a pattern through all of this abuse, right? It's get abused by a person, go back to
Mhm.
them.
Yeah.
But it's also, you see sometimes it starts in the family. I'm being abused and I can't go anywhere. So there's a power
Yeah.
dynamic there, right? And
Yeah.
then with Jehovah's Witnesses, I mean, your poor mom, by the time she's 13, she's getting disfellowshipped, but it's
Mhm.
always going back,
Oh yeah.
always going back to the abuser, which would have been the organization. I
Yeah,
mean,
and she
we're
did. She continued every time she went back.
yeah, we're shunning 13-year-olds here.
Mhm.
Um, you know, it's just so it's so sad, and really it's such a good um, encapsulation of just the way. Uh, you see ex Jehovah's Witnesses constantly are chasing these emotionally unavailable Jehovah's Witness family members and such, trying to have relationships and such as though it's someday, well, of course, this next time it's going to be different, but it's not,
Right.
because
Yeah,
they're
it's never
not
different.
changing. They're still in the same place. And so we just keep reaching back toward abuse instead of reaching out toward freedom or potentially healthy things. And oftentimes that's
Right.
because we don't know how to handle healthy. We know how to
Yeah.
handle dysfunction. That
Oh
feels
yeah.
like home, but healthy,
Yeah.
that's scary, you know? And but
I
it's
talk about that a lot with my husband because his family is the complete opposite of mine.
mm,
They don't really have any drama. I mean, every family has a little bit, but they all like each other, which I'm not used to. I'm not used to being in a family where everybody actually likes each other.
what monsters like each other.
I know. I need the dysfunction. Give me chaos.
Well, you know, and then you see people keep repeating that pattern, right? They get back into the next chaotic relationship. They find the next abuser because
Yep.
they've never learned to value themselves. So we've all been taught to get our value externally through people who are often very charismatic, but that just
Right.
hides what lies underneath, you know?
Mhm.
And we've never been taught that we deserve anything better. So it's easy for us to just keep going for these people who just keep treating us bad because we don't
Yeah,
believe we
that's what you're
deserve
used
anything
to.
better.
Yeah. Yeah. If that's how you were raised, if that's what
Yeah,
you grew up with, then that's just what you stay in. And
yeah.
she's finally gotten out of those situations now. She's a lot happier.
When you say out of those situations, you mean out of the relational, or is she still a witness? Or
I think she would consider herself to be inactive.
okay,
She hasn't been to meetings in a couple of years. My little sister, who's 8 now, is celebrating holidays and birthdays. She had her first birthday party, I think, 2 years ago.
oh,
And we had Christmas as a family the last 2 years, which was really nice.
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Um, Good for you guys. I mean, really, it's about breaking the pattern, the cycle of generational trauma, and these things that get passed down. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you all are all working together on it. I'm just sorry that she started off on the wrong foot, and of no fault of her own. It was environmental, and then you just people keep repeating the patterns that their
Oh,
environment
yeah.
gave them.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it took us moving to California for her to be reinstated. I was talking to a new body of elders about it, and she was reinstated then. That wasn't the last time though. When I was 12, she was disfellowshipped, which I don't think anything could prepare you for a parent being disfellowshipped. That's a whole different thing. The
Can you
elders, I
expound
remember.
on that? What did that mean to you at 12 to have that happen?
Well, we were kind of like the token witness family. You know, there's always that one family in the hall that just does more. They sing louder and they give better comments and longer talks that people clap after. And that was us. And sorry, it was very shocking when she got disfellowshipped. I had no idea that it was coming. She just came home one night and told me, I'm going to be disfellowshipped on Thursday. You don't have to be there if you don't want to. And I wasn't. I didn't want to be there. I found out later that she did it intentionally because of all the pressure that she was under. She just couldn't do it anymore, and she needed an out for a little while, which I can completely understand. But I remember the elders sitting down with me the meeting after she was disfellowshipped and telling me, you don't need to talk to your mom anymore. They said, don't talk to her at the Kingdom Hall. I don't want you to act like you even see her there. And when you're home, you should not be talking to her more than you have to. Which is a horrible thing to say to a 12-year-old about their own mother. And that really, really hurt our relationship because I did what I was told. I did what I was supposed to. I kept my contact with her to a minimum. She still came to all the meetings that she could. She would come in, right before it started and leave as soon as it was over. And I wouldn't even hold her hand during prayer, which I think really, it hurt both of us a lot, but I did what I was told to do.
Well, how long did you do that for? How long did that last?
She was disfellowshipped for a couple of years, I think.
So Jehovah's Witness shunning, the elders took a couple years of your relationship.
They did, and it did not recover until the last few years. Honestly, our relationship was very, very badly damaged.
Well, think about the dynamic of that. You at 13 are shunning your mom, but which may have felt one way to you, but also she at, I don't know,
She was in her
30s,
late 30s, yeah.
she in her 30s is so brainwashed by this thing that she thinks she probably thought on some level she deserves to be shunned by her 13-year-old. I mean, the level of shame that you have to carry to feel like you deserve as a parent to be shunned in your own household by your own daughter because some jerks at the Kingdom Hall that follow this awful dogma think that you deserve. I mean, it's just really sad to be a 30-something-year-old person and to feel that level of shame, which I'm sure started a long time before that, but and was just piled on. But this is it puts you both almost like at child status on some level, or puts you on the same level in a really weird way.
Well, and I have a couple of very vivid memories from that year or two. A lot of it I think I kind of subconsciously blocked out because I was in so much pain and I was so depressed at that point already. I remember I think it was after the meeting one day, she asked me if I was ashamed of her, and I told her yes. Told her that I was ashamed of her, and I still regret that to this day because I know how bad.
I get that, but you were a kid caught up in the same abuse she was caught up in. She felt ashamed of it, probably. That's why she's asking. So you're all just none of you are bad people. You're just caught up in the weird dysfunctional game that Jehovah's Witnesses play that destroys lives.
Well, and I don't know if this is like an actual regulation or if it was just something that our elders enforced, but I wasn't supposed to eat with her in public. She wasn't supposed to be seen having a meal with witnesses in public.
Well, yeah,
So
you're not supposed to even eat with such a man, so to
yeah,
speak, as the scripture
yeah.
says.
So we were at, I don't remember if it was a convention or assembly. I think it was an assembly, and we were staying at a hotel. I hadn't seen my grandpa and my grandma Grace for a while. They had come into town for the assembly, and they asked if we all wanted to go eat. And I was really excited. I'm like, yeah. And they said, but your mom can't come. And I told her I'm going to go with Nana and I'm going to go have lunch with Pa and Grace. And she got so upset with me. She got so mad at me because I wouldn't eat with her. And it started a very big fight. She stormed out of the hotel room and drove off. And my Nana and I waited to be picked up by my grandpa and Grace.
I mean,
And honestly, I think that was kind of a turning point. I think that's where it got really bad between us.
well, I mean, I think it's fair that she is upset on a level, but she
Mhm.
also had to know. I mean, by this time,
Yeah.
you should know the rules. You know that this is how it
Right.
works, and you know that your daughter's 13 or
Yeah.
whatever young age. I mean, and caught
Yeah.
up in the thing you raised her in. So, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just out of circumstances where I don't think anybody tried to hurt each other, but hurt ensued
We were both
because
caught up
your
in
own
it.
witnesses were involved.
Yeah. We both hurt each other a lot. And that's, like I said, that's something that we've worked through the last few years, and
Yeah,
it's not a part of our relationship anymore.
that's good. That's
And
good. I mean,
it
well, it's
was
a lot to work through, and I hope you can both forgive yourselves because she was this person that had gone through all this abuse her whole life. You also had gone through a lot of abuse, and we're a child, so we
Mhm.
can only we need to be able to forgive kids for what kids do when brought
Yeah.
up in abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's breaking that cycle now. So,
Good.
yeah.
It's a lot to change. It's a lot.
It is. It is. And especially after spending so many years. I left when I was 18. And I mean, 18 years is a long time, but my mom is in her 40s and she has just finally left for good, I think. And I think about that too with like my nana and my grandpa. I can't imagine spending 70 plus years in the organization and then turning around and leaving. I don't know what that would do to a person mentally.
Well, I can tell you, a lot of times ex Jehovah's Witnesses will say things like, "I wouldn't want to try to wake up Nana because, you know, it would be too traumatic for her." But that's not
Yeah.
our decision to make.
Right.
And most people, at least from the people that I've talked to that are up in age and left, while, yeah, it's traumatic, it's always traumatic to leave that thing, and most people would rather live one day a free man than their whole life in prison. So,
Right.
I think that there's something to be said about, giving people a chance and not selling them short, because we don't know how much time they may have left, and if they ever did, it's not up to us to save them anyway, but, they have to wake
Right.
up, but, if
Yeah.
they're ready to wake up and they were to find their way out, they'd have a lot to process like anybody else, but hopefully they get to at least live some life in freedom. It'd be pretty
Yeah.
cool.
My grandpa is kind of there. I think he's still very mentally in.
That's
But
tough.
other than the memorial, I don't think that he attends any meetings. He's got a girlfriend up in St. Louis, and they live together, and he just kind of does his own thing. He's teaching at a college now, which would be a big no-no, but he loves it. He has a great time doing that.
So he's educated.
Hmm. Yeah,
That's
he is a plumber by trade. He owned his own plumbing company in Texas for decades. It's still around. It just got bought out, but it's still called Carroll Plumbing. Um, and now he teaches a plumbing course. He teaches a master plumbing course.
oh well, good for him. Uh, ultimately, hope everybody gets to find themselves in new ways here, whenever they can. I mean, um, healing is always better than not healing.
Yeah.
It is hurtful to the process of healing isn't always easy, uh, but neither was staying in that thing that was the destroyer of all families and everything else. So, um,
Exactly.
um, so let's talk then a little bit about so you growing up then. Unless there's anything else about your mom you wanted to share.
I'll get into it with the rest of me.
Okay. Okay. So you're being raised in this thing. Talked a little bit about what school was, well, at least post school was like for you. What was it like in your home growing up? I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of people around at different times and were kind of raised by different people at times. So what was it
Yeah.
like growing up for you?
Um, we were broke, first of all. We were very low income, and that made things difficult.
Sure.
Even with my mom working, 80 hours a week, we still barely made it. I think we were fortunate when in California and in Missouri to find a good congregation. I hear a lot of horror stories about people going into halls and just being harassed and not feeling welcomed, but that was not the case with us. Um, there were a lot of people in the hall who helped us out. People would show up on our doorstep with boxes full of food, or somebody would slip a check into my mom's purse while we were at the meeting. People, we really found a community, and I think that we needed it. Um,
So people were
for
generous and or knew
Yeah,
that you all were struggling and were trying
yeah,
to be generous to help you survive.
right, right. And I didn't have a whole lot of friends growing up. It was very difficult for me to make friends, especially with people my own age. I was also one of the only young kids in our hall in California. So my nana encouraged me to make friends with older ones. And I still do that. Find myself more comfortable talking to people who are decades older than me than people who are, my age. Um, but I had this little notebook that I would take around the hall with me, and if there was somebody that I hadn't talked to before, my nana would have me go up and ask them what their name was and how old they were when they got baptized, and something like, what are you looking forward to about paradise? And I had this little notebook full of interviews from all the older people in the hall, um, and they were my friends. I really didn't have many regular friends. I had the older ones in the hall.
I think that's a very common experience, and a lot of folks, even after leaving, are more comfortable at times with older ones because
Yeah,
we were never really encouraged or allowed to have relationships with peers. We were supposed to
yeah.
push most of our peers away at school and places like that, right? So, um, if you didn't
Which I
have any
mean,
at the Kingdom Hall, you're in trouble.
yeah, and I did that to a certain extent at school. I very badly wanted to be accepted though, and I learned how to live a double life at a very young age. Like second grade on, I was a completely different person at school than I was at home. Especially when we moved to Missouri. That was in 2009. The company that my mom worked for got bought out, and they laid off a lot of their staff, and she was one of them. And my grandpa and his wife had been living in Missouri, and they told us to come out and visit during the summer of '08 and see what we thought of it. I think he could tell that my mom needed a break. She needed some time to just get away from everything. So we went out there, and she really liked it. And the next year we moved. Um, right before we moved, we actually had an international convention in San Diego, and we were one of the host congregations. So we had a delegate staying with us from England, which was really cool. Um, I remember really enjoying that convention. It was at Qualcomm. It was one of the last open air ones that they used. And I remember seeing like people from Africa playing drums in the corridors during lunch, and people were singing everywhere. And it was, for a little kid, that's really exciting. You,
Well,
you feel a lot of
yeah. I mean,
people.
most of us, our lives were pretty gray and colorless. There wasn't much. It was the same meetings, the same teachings, the same conventions. So
Yeah,
anytime you have anything that is different, and unique like that, it's gonna feel amazing because you're so
Oh,
starved for anything interesting to happen. So yeah, that's got to be that must have been really fun. A lot of exposure to different culture and things in different ways that you never would have ever been exposed to otherwise as a
mhm.
JW kid.
Yeah, it was really cool. And not a whole lot of people get to say that they got to host for an international. And we got to do it again when I was older in Missouri. But I'll talk about that when we get further down.
Okay. But yeah, that
Um,
must have, so you hosted someone from England, you said, right?
mhm.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
Um,
That international ended less like a week before we were moving to Missouri. And my nana refused to pack anything before the delegate got there because she didn't want there to be boxes around while we had somebody staying with us. So in less than a week, we packed up our house and moved um, to Missouri. And I had just turned 8 when we moved out there.
it's just, it's interesting to me, and I don't know, maybe I don't know what hosting a delegate requires, but your mom's working herself to the bone.
Yeah.
You all are not well off at all. You're struggling financially, and yet
Mhm.
you all were hosting someone from another country. Did that cost you?
Yeah.
Did that cost you guys money? Did that cost you all? I mean, were you all put out by that?
I don't know for sure.
Okay, not at all.
I know when my mom got laid off, she got a pretty good severance check, and she hadn't used any of her sick time or her vacation time except for that trip to California or to Missouri the year before. So she got all of that on her last check, and I think that helped us a lot. That helped me finish out the school year and get us moved, and I'm sure it helped when we hosted that sister.
It's just there's a lot of people in the organization. My parents would do this too to some degree, who
Mhm.
have nothing, and yet they're the ones who are stepping up. And like my parents were taking, I remember as a kid watching my parents drive everybody around out in service and go pick people up for the meetings. All these other
Yep.
people with like nice cars and money, nobody's doing it. But my family, for whatever, we're the ones picking people up. And I just remember thinking,
Mhm.
like, nobody's ever given my parents money for gas. If our car breaks down, we are royally screwed.
Oh
And
yeah.
these other people drive by these houses. Why can't they pick them up? Why does it have to be us? We're the poor family with all the kids piled
Yeah.
into a car already, picking up people that barely fit in the car, sitting on people's laps. What are we doing here? Where's everybody else? So it's just
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, you guys, it sounds like we're struggling so much in certain ways, but then also like seen as this, the
Oh, we
dichotomy
were,
of your family is interesting because your mom's
yeah.
disfellowshipped over and over and over, and there's all of this
Well,
drama.
and she was like this success story because
But
she
yeah,
left and came back, and she was a single mother, and her unbelieving mate had left her when her baby was born, and I think we got a lot of sympathy from people. But we got a lot of help. Like I said, I think we were very fortunate. And it was the same when we moved to Missouri. We found a very loving congregation there. And people helped us out a lot still. When my mom was disfellowshipped was about when I was wanting to study to get baptized, and there was an older sister in the hall who studied with me, and she would bring me to meetings because at that point my nana had moved out. My mom had gotten married, and he was not a witness, so I needed help getting to and from the meetings.
so this is
And
when you were like 12, 13.
yeah, 12, 13.
Okay. Your Nana
She would
moved out. Was that because your mom was disfellowshipped?
So my like 6 months after my mom got this fellowship, she came home and told us that she was getting married,
Okay.
um, which was another shock. I had no idea that she was seeing someone. I looking back, I should have because she had stopped coming home. She would stay up in Springfield. We were living in Branson. It was like a 40-minute drive. And she would stay up there over the weekends and we didn't know it, but she was staying with John. And she came home one day and told us that she was getting married. And my Nana knew who he was. His family goes back a long time with mine. My Nana was actually the bridesmaids at his parents' wedding. That family was always very tight with ours, and all the kids grew up around each other. I think they have 5 or 6 kids. And he and my mom dated off and on over the years, and finally got married when I was 13. And he had a lot of problems. He was a very angry alcoholic, and I don't know why my mom didn't see that when she was staying with him, but she certainly saw it after he moved in. At their wedding, he was drunk. The whole time he was drunk before it even started. And
I mean, your mom had
like
pushed through
falling
red
over.
flags her whole life to live everything, right? I mean,
Yes,
that's
exactly.
I'm not throwing shade at her. I'm just saying, but that's what you're taught to do, right? As the again keep the cycle going. It's a red flag, but red flags are invisible at this point,
Yes. Well, and
unfortunately.
I really don't think my Nana wanted them to get married. I think she kind of resented my mom for marrying him. But after it was like a month and a half after they got married, he got arrested. He had a warrant out for his arrest because he had multiple DUIs and never done any of his community service or the SATOP class that he was supposed to do. So they picked him up and he was in jail for, I think, almost 4 months. He served like a partial part of his sentence. I think it was 6 months originally. So that was the start of their marriage, him going to jail. And it was while he was in jail that I got reproved for the first time.
Well, now you got to get reproved, you had to get baptized. So had you gotten baptized already?
No, so they called it a private reproval, but
Okay.
I don't think it was officially recorded as one. I still lost my privileges for a few months after it. I was 13, I think, when it happened. And like I said, I had already been living a double life for a long time at that point. I cursed and did things that I wasn't supposed to do at school. I had some really good friends with people who, looking back, I probably shouldn't have been that close to because they were a little rough. And at that time, I think when I was like 11 or 12, I realized that I was bisexual. I had a very good friend growing up, and I realized one day why I was such good friends with her, because I was, in love with her. And I had, secret social media accounts. It was right around when Facebook and Instagram were getting big. My mom was always very involved with social media, and so I was as well. And I had a Facebook where I would talk to people from school, and I would meet strangers on there, and I was doing things that I should not have been doing. And my mom found out about it. I remember I was sick that day, throwing up in the bathroom, and my mom came in, and my phone was going off. It kept dinging like I was getting notifications because I hadn't muted the notifications on Facebook. And so she picked it up and walked away with it. And I chased after her, and she started scrolling through and reading all this stuff. And I was in so much trouble. Her first call was to the elders, and I had to sit down with a committee with her and go through all of the things that I had done and why I shouldn't be doing them. Like I said, I don't think that they recorded it as a reproval, but they treated it like a reproval. There was no announcement, but I couldn't comment or give parts or go in service for a little while.
Your mom at this point, was she was disfellowshipped?
Yes,
So
she was
she's
still disfellowshipped.
it's just interesting how the first call is to the elders, not like
Mhm.
it's not about parenting, right?
Right.
It's the watchtower raised so many of us.
Yeah.
Our parents were told how to parent by watchtower. When something went wrong, take your kids to to the elders or whatever. That's
Well, my Nana was still living with us at that point too, and she would not have let that slide without talking to the elders. So
yeah, it's
I
just
lost my.
interesting that your mom who's disfellowship. Of course, she was
Yeah.
probably trying to get back, right? You said she
Oh
went to the
yeah.
meetings and stuff, but you know,
Mhm.
then that's even gonna make her. That probably made her even more want to go to the elders because she's trying to get back too, right? So
Mhm.
that shows her in a good light
So she's
that
putting in
she's
effort.
trying to put forth the effort to parent her child aright in the truth, so to speak, and make sure that she's dealt with. Oh, it's awful.
Yeah. It was rough, and I did not like John at all. I hated the fact that my mom got married, which I feel like any 13-year-old who has had a single parent their whole life is going to be very hostile toward a step parent coming in, especially one who is drunk most of the time.
I was saying,
Um,
it depends too on how you're introduced to the person. Are there healthy
yeah,
conversations had, or people? It's
yeah,
more probably just, oh, boom, here you go.
yeah, and that's the thing is because it was so shocking. It was just she came home and told us I'm getting married.
Yeah,
We're like, okay, I guess that's great.
that's not the way, but that's,
No, no, it wasn't. It wasn't. But he served his sentence, and then after he got out, they got pregnant, and my sister was born a month and a day before I turned 15. Um, and I was I was still in school at that point. I was still in public school, and I was so excited. I could not wait for her to be born. That was the biggest moment of my life. And I remember my Nana telling me, "You are going to raise this kid." She said, "I raise you and you are going to raise this kid." And I said, "I don't care. I want a sister." And I think she was very resentful that my mother had another child because she thought she would have to raise her again, because obviously I was such a burden to have to help raise. And that created a lot of resentment between her and my mom.
well, yeah, and I mean, really, it's not the healthiest for you at that age to have to raise a kid,
No.
or to be told that. There's just a lot of not great boundaries and things here, but I'm sure you were also, to some degree doing what you all had to do to survive financially and things
Yeah.
too. So I get that. You
Yeah.
said you were excited to raise her. Can I ask why? What was it? What was it for you that was like, oh, this is awesome?
Uh, well, I didn't realize the amount of work that would go into it, first of all.
Yeah.
um,
What do you think you were gonna get? I mean, was it, I want someone to give me attention, or that I can dote on, or to give me love?
I
Were
think
you
someone
looking
that I
for?
could dote on.
Yeah.
I consider her to be my kid. She's
Mhm.
she's my sister. But she's my kid. And I spent the first 3 years of her life with her, living in the same house before I left. And she has a lot of the same social problems that I do. I think she's on the spectrum. And she has ADHD. The girl cannot sit still. She's just bouncing off the walls constantly. And she's very emotional. She went through a lot of trauma in the last couple of years, and she she has a lot of stuff that she's going to have to work through as she gets older. But I was just excited. I had been an only child for 15 years, and I was going to get to have a sibling. I wanted a brother, but I got a sister instead. I was going to get to put her in cute little dresses and take her to the meeting with me, and I was just excited to have somebody else around.
Well, yeah, and it's also, like I said again, change, right? It's
Yeah,
something different happening. That's not necessarily like, "Hey, I'm getting married." It's like,
right.
"Hey, here's something maybe more positive that's coming in, and at least might have some fun parts of the interest to it." So,
Oh yeah.
well, I'm sure you were. I can definitely understand that. Uh, If you'd like some extra content, if you'd like to learn more about our guests today, maybe even have an opportunity to connect further with them, you can do so by joining the back room tier at patreon.com/shunned. So were you, so 15, you're gonna be a mom, kind of? Check
Kind of.
that.
I was like a full-time babysitter. I also got baptized at 15. I had finished studying the Bible Teach book and what's the other one, the Truth book or something that you used to have to go through.
I don't
There were
remember.
two
I
of
mean, there
them
was
I
like the
remember.
knowledge book.
Yeah, it was Bible Teach, knowledge, and something else.
It
But
used to be
I had
United in
gone.
Worship, but I think they changed that.
Yeah, I don't remember going through that one. But I had
I'm
studied
happy to
all of
start forgetting
that.
those names. So
I know, right? I'll think about that sometimes. I'll try to remember a scripture and I'll go, yes, I can't remember it. Like that's exciting.
yes.
But I had studied all of that with that older sister in the hall. And I went through all the questions and everything when I was 15. And one of really my only close friend who was my age in the hall was also getting baptized that summer. And I spent a lot of time with her family. They were a lot less chaotic than mine was. They were kind of an escape for me. But she and I got baptized together at that convention. And it was just a couple months after Lily was born. But my mom brought her, and I have pictures of me with, my hair all wet, just changed into my clothes, holding my sister. And it was I had told myself at that point, you are going to make this work. No matter what, you are going to stay and you're going to make this work for yourself and for your sister. And I really tried. I studied manically. I studied constantly. I would
Can I ask,
spend.
why did you get baptized? Was that part of like wanting to make it work, or was it more just because your friend was getting baptized and it was kind of like you knew it was the quote right thing to do or whatever?
I think it was all of it combined.
Or did it involve your sister to some degree?
A little bit. It was what was expected of me was the biggest part of it. That's what you do. You become an unbaptized publisher, and then you study and you get baptized and you pioneer. And I did all of those steps because I needed to. That's what I was taught was the only way to live.
Okay, so
So
you did the things that you knew were the next logical steps in the progression, so to speak, but it sounds like you read meeting into it afterward, like
yeah,
I've got to make this work for me and my
yeah,
sister.
yeah. Because I could not put parts of myself away. I think all witnesses to some extent have pieces of themselves that they just bury and forget about. And I could not do that. I couldn't reconcile that with myself. But I was still determined to make the truth my own and study as much as I could.
What was it you couldn't put away?
I think the sexuality was a big part of it. I knew I liked girls from a young age, and I could not stop. I remember reading in the Young People Ask book, there was, I think it was volume 1, there was a chapter on homosexuality. And I read that over and over and over and over again. And I would go through all of the scriptures, and I would look up the scriptures on the online library, and I would read everything about it, trying to change my mind and pray it away. And it obviously did not work.
Well,
I was very determined though.
if you have to, I mean, you said something a second ago that witnesses have parts of themselves they're trying to put away in order to be there. Yeah, and if you do that, if you have to put away who you are to be a part of this thing, and and the parts of you that aren't hurting anyone, you're not a murderer or something. Meanwhile, and we already talked about people grooming people in the congregation and abusing them. They don't have to put that away for some reason,
Right.
but you have to feel guilty as a 15-year-old for being attracted to who you're attracted to, in a way that's not hurting anyone. It's
Right.
it's pretty messed up.
Right. Well, and I didn't really have anybody around me who was gay.
That's
My One of my aunts had come out in her late 20s and had left the witnesses. But it was like she who shall not be named. We just didn't talk about her. When she would call and talk to my nana, it would be a screaming match over the phone. and my Nana would be left, sobbing after it was over because she was so upset. And that was the only thing that I knew about being gay. And I met her briefly when we were moving to Missouri. We drove through Dallas where she was living and stayed with her for a couple of days. And her roommate was living with her. I don't know why I didn't see that was her wife, but my mom told me that it was her roommate. And she wasn't really around much until later on. She came back around right after we moved to Missouri, and then when my grandma Grace died, she was around. And I talked to her a little bit about it. When my great grandma died as well, she came to her funeral, and I remember sitting with her outside and telling her that I thought I was gay. And she started crying and she hugged me and told me it was okay. And I begged her, please don't tell mom. Please don't tell my mom. And she swore that she wouldn't, and she never did. But that was the only like source that I had. That was my only outlet. And she really wasn't around.
Yeah, because she was ostracized. So then you knew what it would mean for you if you
Oh,
too were gay, right?
absolutely. And I was terrified of that. I remember hearing growing up that when she came out and left, my Nana almost died. She almost grieved herself to death. And that scared the hell out of me. I just knew that if I ever left, that she was going to die. And that's honestly, that's why I stuck around for so long. That's why I kept trying to make it my own and to believe it, because I refused to let that happen. And I tried for years.
Oh boy, that's just so sad. I mean, if Nana dies because you're gay, I'll just be blunt. If Nana dies because you're gay, that's on Nana. Like, that's not on
Yeah.
you. Nana's got a problem if she's that
Yeah.
grieved by it. Nana's got some stuff to work on, and
Yeah.
uh, because in the real world, people can be gay and nobody has to die. It's amazing.
Yeah.
We don't have to
Yep.
kill gay people, and gay people being gay doesn't have to kill someone else because they're so upset by it. It's
Yep.
real amazing what it's like to be an adult.
Yeah.
It's just these beliefs, man, that just get in the way. I just Gosh, I mean, you were carrying around so much pressure. 4th gen, you're the one. You gotta do all of this for your sister. You gotta do
Yeah.
this for your mom, your Nana. You gotta squelch who you are so you don't kill Nana. Like, good
Mhm.
Lord. That must have, I mean, I don't know how you got through it, but that must have been tremendous pressure just on the
It
daily
was.
for you, trying to not be who you are so that you
It
keep
was.
everybody else happy.
Well, and my release really was school. I had some very good friends that I made. I was definitely not popular by any means, but I mean, I grew up in a town of maybe 3,000 people. So it was a little school. All of us had grown up together and we all knew each other. And I had a few close friends. When I was in, I think third grade, I was in the gifted program. They tested me in, and I feel like that's pretty common too for witnesses, as we get that gifted kid burnout, which I definitely did. But I've really found my people there. I found my best friend in gifted, and we stayed friends until I left school. I saw her about a year ago too. We still keep in touch. But I was a completely different person at school than I was at home, because I felt like it was the only place where I could be myself. And I was a huge nerd too. I still am. I loved, Star Wars and Star Trek and Lord of the Rings, and I watched a ton of cartoons, and I found people who were interested in the same things that I was. Because when I was home and I would talk about that, I was kind of dismissed for it, because you're not supposed to get that into stuff. That's worldly. We shouldn't be getting that into it. But at school, I found people who were just as big a nerds as I was, and I got to be myself around all of them. And I think losing that was very difficult when I left public school. That affected me very, very badly.
Yeah, it was your only place where your only solace, your only place of mental and emotional safety. It sounded like where you could just truly be yourself. And it's sad how many Jehovah's Witness kids just have to live, well, and adults, let's face it, the adults do too, have to live a
Yeah.
life that's completely untrue to who they want to be. And then the way they make you feel bad for the double life, like your secret sins and things like that. Instead of,
Oh, I was so ashamed of myself.
well, of course you
My
were.
self-worth was at an all-time low.
Well, it's designed to
Even
make you ashamed of yourself.
yeah, and even when I would curse and I would say like "God damn" or I would say "fuck," I would say a little silent prayer and be like, "I'm sorry, Jehovah," because I thought lightning was going to strike me one of these days when I said it.
Yeah, it's well, you become your own thought police, right? And that's why they teach what they teach. It's why they gaslight people like they do. They want you to distrust yourself so that you
Right.
trust them. But it's just sad that you're made to feel bad about this double life when the double life was just a life you were trying to explore to figure out who you
Yeah.
really were and to find people that matched who you really were. Instead, you're being forced into a mold that's not who you are at all.
Well, and I look back at it now, and the witness life was my double life. I was
Yep.
myself otherwise.
Yep.
I was living a double life at home. I was pretending to be somebody that I wasn't. Um, and it caught up with me. I got reproved again, not very long after I got baptized. I had an assembly interview like 6 months after I got baptized. Um, I had been given an opportunity in 8th grade to go to a college program and start getting college credits through my gifted program. And my mom talked me out of it because that's higher education and I wouldn't be doing that. It would have been a summer camp for a couple of weeks around all kinds of bad influences. And I turned it down and I still wish that I hadn't. But I gave an assembly part about that because it was such an encouraging story for this young woman to give up an opportunity like that. And everybody was just so proud of me because I had done that. And then like 2 months later, I got publicly reproved for the same stuff again, cursing. And I had a little group of friends within the hall finally, and I started being more open with them about who I actually was. And I said the wrong thing to the wrong person, and she told her mom. And they went to the elders. She was in a different congregation too. She went to her mom, and her mom actually came to our hall to talk to our elders about it. And it was a group of us that got in trouble. The main thing really, we had been at one of my friend's house, and we had gone over to another kid's house, and he had stolen a bottle of Fireball from his parents' liquor cabinet, and we had brought it back and taken shots. And oh my God, that was the worst thing that we ever could have done. We got in so much trouble. I was publicly reproved. The rest of them were not, though. The rest of them were private. There was a kid, the kid who stole the liquor from his parents was privately reproved. And I really think it's because his dad was an elder and his dad would have had to step down if he had gotten publicly reproved. One of the parents of one of the girls who was there was a ministerial servant, and he had to step down as well because it happened in his house. And it was a big mess. I lost my privileges for probably 3 or 4 months, and I was so ashamed of myself. I was the golden child in the congregation. I gave steadied comments, and people clapped after I was up on the stage, and I felt like such a disappointment to everyone because I felt like I had just let everybody down.
So take that. You felt like you let everybody down, just like the ministerial servant who let everybody down because something happened in his house.
Yeah,
Like,
it happened under his roof, so he
right.
was held responsible.
Yeah, it's just the way they make you feel responsible. Like they're great at making you feel shame, but
Mhm.
then when you have something good, like you got accepted into this gifted thing, and I mean, just think on what part, I guess it's Earth, but there's no other planet that we can talk about. But where else would you have a young lady up on a stage being like, I was accepted into a gifted program and I said no. And everyone would
Yep.
erupt in applause. That's
Yep.
insane. That's
Yep.
so backwards. Like
It
no
was.
one would do that.
And I felt so left out too, because a couple of the kids I was in gifted with got to go do it, and
Well,
they
of
had a blast.
course.
They got to start their college career, 4 years early, and I wanted that, and I could not do it.
But
Um, I,
it's so bizarre that you've got a good thing, you say no to it, and that's to be celebrated.
you know,
But
it,
then
it's like
when
it's
you
like I
do
remember
bad
being
things,
in
they're
it,
all over that. Like that they are
yeah,
there for you when you do something negative. They are right there to let you know at every turn what a
yep.
piece of trash you are. And it's just
Oh yeah. Well, and
that's
getting publicly reproved like 2 months after I gave an interview at an assembly was just scandal. Oh my God, it was such a scandal. And
well,
right
it's meant to make
right
you feel
after,
shame so you'll get back in line, right?
yes, and I did. I did
Of
everything
course.
I needed to do, and I got all my privileges back, and immediately started pioneering with my friend who I got baptized with, and we would get up at 4:30 on Monday mornings and drive up to Springfield where her grandma lived, and we would spend the whole day in service up there. And they were the kind of people to walk up to people in cars and hand them tracts, or to go in parking lots and hand people tracts, and that scared the hell out of me. I would not do it. I refuse. We do that for a couple hours until the meeting for service began, and then we get in a group and go door to door for a little bit. Or I remember we would visit nursing homes sometimes and talk to people there. And then we'd break for lunch and do letter writing until about 4 when we'd head home. So I would get about 12 hours every Monday, and that's how I made my time.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a long day
It
of
was, and
golly.
and I definitely fudged my time too. I very rarely got all of my hours, but I made sure to write down that I was getting them. And our I don't think they're called presiding overseers anymore. I don't know what they're called.
Kobe's the
But
coordinator of the body
yeah,
of
yeah, the
elders.
Kobe's. Our Kobe was very, very anal about everybody turning in their time. If like two people were late, he would have a talk that Thursday, and he would get up there and remind everybody, you need to turn your time in or we're not going to count you. And I got my time in every month, and I made sure those numbers looked the way that they needed to. Um,
Does
it
make you
was,
wonder, doesn't it? How much they report these numbers, let's say of the well, I guess now you don't have to count time,
yeah, you don't have to.
but when they were, there's a billion hours or whatever, just makes you wonder how many people out there just totally fudging their
I,
numbers or just completely inventing it and turning it
oh yeah,
in.
oh yeah. I almost never got my hours in. I always fudged my numbers. And I would add a couple of magazines and tracks on there when it was still all separated out between like books and magazines and tracks instead of just placements. I loved when it turned to placements because I could just write down a number that looked good. I hated recording everything. When I graduated, they had a graduation party, and people gave me all kinds of stuff because they knew I had started pioneering. So I got a bunch of customized, covers for my Bible and songbook, and little sheets that I could record my time on. Everybody was so excited. I got jewelry with my name on it. I remember getting one that had Yahweh on it, for my baptism. Yeah. And it was such a big deal.
Idolatry.
Yeah, I know. But now you see them with jw.org stickers on their cars. So
Talk about idolatry. It's
mhm.
interesting to watch. You talked about earlier when you were interviewing the older folks at the Kingdom Hall, you were to ask them when they got baptized and what they wanted to do in paradise. And then now you're talking about graduation or getting baptized and these gifts you got that were all JW related. Like
Oh yeah.
nobody is really being themselves. Nobody is interested in who you really are as a person. It's just all witness stuff.
Hmm. I don't hardly ever remember people asking me about my personal life. They would ask me, you know, how was service or how's pioneering going? How are you and your pioneer partner doing? Things like that. And I never got to actually be myself at the hall ever. I remember people asking me how I was doing, and all I would say is I'm tired, but I'm okay. And that was my response every time is I'm okay, I'm just tired. And I still have that response.
A bunch of tired, exhausted 16, 17, 18-year-olds because they run into the ground by this thing and try not to be who they really are. I mean, that is exhausting. It's exhausting to have to live different lives and to try to be somebody you're not to make everybody else happy.
It is. And things were rough at home. Mom and John fought a lot. They had a lot of very big fights. And, you know, I would keep Lily in my room or in hers while that was going on and make sure that she was distracted. And things got rough between my mom and I. Things just kept getting worse. And I found comfort in John. I didn't want a dad at all. And I told him that you are not my dad, but I was happy to have another parent around. You know, I had been used to having my Nana and my mom, and I needed somebody to kind of fill that place. And so John was it. And he took an interest in the things that I liked. Like he loved Star Wars. We sat and we watched all the movies together. He watched all the Marvel movies with me because I wanted to. He made me feel like I was accepted in my home, and I didn't realize that some of it was inappropriate until I was older. Like when we watched movies, we would sit in bed and watch them. I would sit on my mom's side of the bed and he would sit on his, and we'd watch movies all day. And I remember my grandpa coming over one day and seeing that we were sitting in bed next to each other, and he pulled out of the room and started yelling at him, and I couldn't understand why. I didn't get it. I had never had a father around or a father figure, and to me that just seemed normal. You know, I was getting the attention that I needed, and I was getting somebody who would actually take an interest in the things that I liked. That he had ulterior motives, which I'll get into a little bit more down the line a little bit.
Say that, yeah, that's when you're desperate to have someone accept you for who you are, and someone shows you that attention. I mean, you see how it really does set up kids to be groomed for things, right? It really, you have so many Jehovah's Witness kids who just want someone to show them some attention or to take an interest in them. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, sometimes it's the wrong kind of person who does take interest in them, and it's then exploited, and it's really sad.
It was. And the worse things got between him and mom and me and my mom, the closer he and I got. He was very ill for a long time. He had a hernia surgery, and they had put in one of those mesh that you see in commercials, or if you had this mesh, you're entitled to compensation because it's leading to all these things. And so he was very, very sick for a long time. So I went with him, took Lily with us to doctor's appointments, and then, you know, we'd go to the mall, and I looked young, but I looked like I could be old enough to be Lily's mom, and people would say, "Oh, your daughter's so cute," and he wouldn't correct them. He would just keep walking. It was, looking back, I can see it, but then I just felt like I was finally getting what I needed. You know, I was getting the relationship that I had craved for so many years.
Well, I don't know if this went any farther as far as
It did.
inappropriate. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was 17, we had an international convention in St. Louis. And we were one of the host congregations again. We didn't have a delegate, but we went up early and helped. We volunteered all over the city on like tours of the city and things like that, which again was really cool. At that point in my life, I was mostly mentally out. I had started kind of deconstructing a little bit. One of the things that never sat right with me was disfellowshipping, because it just never made any sense to me. Why would you try to bring someone back by being hateful to them? That just never sat well with me, especially with my mom being disfellowshipped, which she did get reinstated right after my sister was born. And I had a lot of problems like existentially when I was a teenager. I had huge existential crises. I couldn't understand Jehovah just being there forever, just never having a beginning. That made no sense to me. I thought very scientifically, and I couldn't make that make sense in my brain. And I started picking at things, and I was still studying. I would spend 4 or 5 hours preparing for each meeting. I would have my notebook where I wrote all my answers out, and I have my laptop where I would be on the online library, and I would look up every single scripture that was in whatever we were reading, whether it was, the Watchtower or whatever book we were in for the midweek meeting. And I studied very dutifully, but I still just could not make it make sense. And when I was 17, my grandma Grace passed away. She had developed Alzheimer's very young. She was in her early 50s when she was diagnosed, and she spent the last couple years of her life in a nursing home. My grandpa was very deep in his addiction at that time and could not take care of her. And my mom and I and one of my aunts were there when Grace passed. And I remember taking a couple of minutes with her by myself to say goodbye, because we knew that it was coming. They called us and told us, you need to be here because it's going to be in the next couple of days. And so we were there for the last 3 days that she was alive. And I took a couple of minutes alone with her, and I told her, I promise you that I am going to stay. I promise you that you are going to see me again. I am going to make this work, and I will see you in paradise. And I felt a lot of guilt for many years because I didn't keep that promise. But I tried really hard. I kept studying and kept researching, and I couldn't reconcile so many different things, doctrines or moral. I just couldn't make any of it make sense. And we had that international, and then we came home, and I remember feeling very, very welcomed emotionally. Like, it was a good experience to be around all of those people who were united for something, in common. And I felt a lot of love, but I didn't feel anything during the talks. Everything that they said just went in one ear and out the other. It was like I was too far gone at that point for any of it to really register. And my mom realized that something was going on after we came home. It was maybe a month after we got home, and she confronted me about it. And I told her I don't want to be a witness anymore. And I was so upset. I was just sobbing because I just knew it was going to kill my Nana, and I was never going to get to see my sister again, and they were going to kick me out. And I was so afraid. I had made a friend at work at that point who told me she would let me move in with her if anything happened. And thankfully I didn't have to. But things got really, really difficult after that. My mom, of course, called the elders and told them that I had told them I didn't want to be a witness. And they asked to meet with me, and I refused. I never met with any of the elders because I knew they were going to disfellowship me. I knew that was going to happen the second that I sat down with them. And I felt like as long as I'm inactive, maybe people will still talk to me. If I'm disfellowshipped, they definitely won't. But maybe if I'm just inactive, people will still want to talk to me. because I have this huge extended family. I have 4 great aunts and uncles who all have kids, who all have kids. I have all of these cousins and relatives that I grew up around, and I was so afraid to lose all of them. I couldn't imagine my life without my family.
And how
But
old were you when you were having to make this decision, or how old were you when you told your mom, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore"?
I was 18. I had just turned 8. I think I had just turned 18. I was either late 17 or early 18. Around this time too, though, was when John started to escalate things. I would be in the bathroom and I would hear a noise out in the hallway or scratching on the door, or I thought I heard a camera shutter one time on a phone. And I would come out, and he smoked pot, and I would come out in the hall and I would smell it in the hallway. And I tried not to think anything of it. I tried to just think, there's no way that anything's actually going on. You're just paranoid. And then one day I heard a camera shutter, and I looked down and I saw his phone underneath the door. And he had been taking pictures and videos of me. And I found out in my room as well as in the bathroom.
So sorry.
I deluded myself into thinking that it wasn't actually happening. I couldn't accept that was actually going on. I convinced myself that I had not actually seen it, but at the same time, I was still scared to be home. I started putting towels up underneath the bathroom door whenever I went in there, and putting blankets underneath my door to my bedroom. And I don't know why I didn't say anything. I think I was afraid. I knew that if I told my mom and she found the pictures and the videos, she would see me and I would get in trouble. That's what I thought.
Well, why wouldn't you think that? I mean, coming from
Yeah.
that history, right? I mean, even your mom got in trouble for being groomed by an older guy as a kid, right? Like, so it's always your fault, period.
Yeah. Well, and
You're the
I was
temptress as a lady, right? As a young lady,
exactly.
you're the temptress, you're the
Mhm.
Jezebel, you're the
Yeah.
harlot or
God forbid
whatever.
I make someone stumble.
Yeah, yeah, you made
Uh,
somebody stumble by taking a shower in your own house.
yeah, exactly. But
Also,
it continued on for a while, and I didn't say anything. The first time that I saw it, I was 18, but I think he had started when I was 17.
mm,
Um, and what makes it worse is he knew me when I was a baby. He was around when I was little. I have pictures of him and my mom holding me when I was little. Um, so it wasn't like he came into this house and saw a teenager. He knew me as a little girl. Um,
yeah, it's
but
all awful. I don't
it is.
just
It is.
so you're holding all of this, also not wanting to be a witness anymore, and like telling your mom. Your
Mm-hmm.
mom, of course, wants to go to the elders.
Mm-hmm.
But like, isn't your mom married to an alcoholic who's smoking weed in the house and all? Like,
Yeah.
uh, I don't believe you
He
have grounds to be pointing fingers right now. Um,
so he was raised as a witness. His parents were both witnesses, kind of like my mom was raised, but he never got baptized. He just kind of faded out when he was a teenager. And he never did get baptized. He came to meetings with us for a year or two there, would come to conventions and assemblies and stuff, but he never, I think he really just did it for mom and for me. Um, but when I told my mom that I didn't want to be a witness, he pulled me aside and he told me he was very proud of me and that he didn't want to be one either. And life became very difficult for the next couple of months. Things were really, really bad between my mom and I. We had a lot of fights, and I felt like an outsider in my home. And John was where I found comfort because he was the only person that I felt like I could be myself around.
oh, this is set
And
up for such a bad outcome,
it
unfortunately.
is. And when it was in November of 2019. We had some family visiting us because, you know, we would do Thanksgiving after Thanksgiving, you know, when all the turkeys went on sale, you buy one and you have a big meal and you don't call it Thanksgiving. But we did that, and we had some relatives visiting us who came to support my mom because of how devastated she was when I left. And they were both awful to me the whole time we were there. It was my great aunt and uncle. And I was sleeping on the couch. They were sleeping in my room. And in the middle of the night, he molested me. And I woke up at around 3 a.m. and realized what he was doing. And I froze. It was, you know, fight or flight or freeze. And I froze. Couldn't do anything. My mom left for work about an hour and a half later. And I waited until she left and he went back in his room. And then I went out to the car and started driving to my mom's work. And I called her and told her what happened. And her first response was, come to work. I will go home and get him out of the house. I will tell you when you can come home when he's gone. And then she went home, called me home a little bit later, and he was still there. And she made me sit down in the same room as him. She had gone through his phone and found all of these pictures and videos that he had taken. But she also found texts between the two of us where we were shit talking my mom. And we really were. She was making things difficult on both of us. And we talked about it between the two of us, and that made her angry. And she ended up staying with him for another few years. I left home at that point. She sent me to Texas with those relatives that were visiting.
Wait. Her husband molests you. She has all the proof. The
Do you want to know why she
thing
didn't go to
she's
the police?
upset about is that you shit talked her? Well, she deserves to be shit talked.
And she did not go to the police because she called the elders and told them what happened, and they told her to keep it internal. They encouraged her not to go to
The
the police.
same
So
thing
she
that
didn't.
happened to her, she did to you.
Yes, even though John was not a witness, they still said keep it internal. And I still refused to meet with them. I never once sat down and met with any of the elders, even after that happened. They tried to call me. They came to the house, and I just refused.
So, my heart hurts very much for you because you were very much told where you stand by your mom's reaction there. And that's
Yeah.
just really, and it's really sad too that she herself is a survivor and that she didn't stand up or couldn't at the moment for you. And
I think honestly she was afraid to be alone. She had spent so many years as a single
she
mother,
didn't
and now
have
she
to. She
has.
could have had her daughter and kicked the asshole out of the house. She could
I
have,
know.
he could have been in prison where he belongs, and you could have been there. She could have had her daughter, but she chose the wrong one.
Yeah, she did, and she has said that over the years. She regrets
Shoo.
it very much. That's something that again we've worked through. She has so many regrets from those last couple of years of me being at home.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, regrets are one thing, and but
yeah,
it's change where the rubber meets the road, right? I'm sorry is easy to say. Well, actually, I'm sorry can be very difficult to say. Where you really find the healing is, I'm sorry, and then a 180, right? Because an apology without change starts to look a lot like manipulation. So there's got to be
yeah.
real substantive change, and I imagine you guys have a lot of trust to rebuild.
We do, and we've worked on it the last few years. It took her a few years, but she got there, and I think a big part of it too was she wanted Lily to have her dad, my sister. And
Her
she said,
molesting kids' dad? Like,
yeah,
no, that's
exactly.
not the
So
dad to have. Just like this isn't the
I
cult to be in. We
I
were
know.
all taught to make excuses for abusers. And you see it just in the XJW community. Oh, but witnesses are such good people. The fuck they are. They shun their kids so they commit suicide. They prevent them from getting an education. They let them die of needing blood. They're not good people. They're just nice sometimes, but they're not
Exactly.
good people. They treat
Nice
people
is not the same as good.
terribly.
Yep.
But we were taught to make excuses for their bad behaviors. And I mean, I have compassion for your mom ending up there, but goodness gracious, you're the one I have the compassion for primarily here because you didn't do anything here. You were just being, all the adults around you failed you, absolutely failed you when you needed them.
Yeah. Well, and I
Unfortunately, like
remember,
some of them had been failed too.
yeah, and they had, it's a cycle for most of us, and especially with my family,
It is, but
it
it's
was a
one you
vicious
have to own.
Yeah,
You can't
it
make
is.
excuse. You can forgive and all that, but you have to own it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to
Well,
own
and
your
I
own.
remember that day when I sat down with both of them, and she told me I was going to Texas and I was going to take my sister with me. He's like, "Well, why is she taking my child?" And she said, "You already molested one of my children. What's to say you won't do it to the other one?" And he said, "That's disgusting. We're blood related. Carol Ann and I are not related." That was his reasoning. That was how he I don't know, reconciled it with himself. And he has tried over the years to talk to me and to apologize to me, and I won't have any of it. If you know, when I do forgive him, it will not be for him, and he will never know, because I know that's what he wants. He wants my forgiveness, and I'm never going to give that to him.
Well, I'm trying also to wrap my mind around take your sister.
Mhm.
No, get rid of
Yeah.
John. Well,
Yep.
you're choosing the abuser of your children over your children and sending your children away. And I don't know if
What
part of
she
that
told
is
me.
because you don't love yourself enough either to think that you deserve better, but
Yeah,
this is
and I
just
think that was a
very
big part of
sad.
that was a big part of it. And what she told me is you and your sister are going to go to Lubbock with your great aunt and uncle, and I will be there as soon as I can. I will take care of him, and I will be there as soon as I can. That did not happen. After a couple of weeks living with my great aunt and uncle, who were awful, my great aunt was horrible to me. She continually told me that everything that happened to me was my fault, and I should have known better. Um, After a couple of weeks of that, my aunt, the one who had come out and left the witnesses, had gotten married the year before to a man, and all of us were very surprised. She decided she wanted to start coming back to meetings, which I really think she
Wait,
only did.
the one who was a lesbian now wanted to get married and come back to the cult.
Yes, and I honestly think the only reason she did it is to have a relationship with us, to see my nana again, and to have her sisters
But
and her
again, it's
nieces.
just returning to the abusers and the people who are not like you're returning to people who I know they're your family. And again, I watch this all the time in the X community. I know they're your family, but often they're trash.
Oh
And
yeah.
you
Oh
should
yeah.
get away from them, not
Yes. Well,
return.
and things only got worse with her, but for she and her husband offered to let me move in with them in Dallas, which I took them up on, because mom had decided at that point she was going to stay with John, and I was not going to move back home, so I moved in with my aunt and uncle, and Lily went home. um, Mom and John followed me there and moved about 5 minutes down the road. So for the next 2 years that I was there, he lived 5 minutes away from me and knew where I lived. And I lived my life in fear for a couple of years, because I knew that if he wanted to, he could get to me. And I was so terrified. Um, but I lived with my aunt and uncle, and I I remember asking one day, I was 18, and I asked them, "Can I go to the mall?" And they were like, why are you asking? You're an adult. Just go. I would never have been able to do that when I was a kid. I remember being late 17, maybe early 18, and asking my mom if I could go eat dinner with some of the people from work, like go to Wendy's. And she told me that Satan was going to get me anywhere he could, even at Wendy's. To go from that to being told you don't have to ask for things, just do them, was a shock at that age.
I bet.
And that was at the end of 2019 when I moved in with them. So COVID started like 3 months after I moved in. My Nana had come to visit in January or February. I think she tried really hard to still have a relationship with me, but it was difficult. There were things that we just didn't talk about. And if she was with me for too long or looked at me for too long, she started crying. I think it hurt her more than anybody else, me leaving. But she lived through it, thankfully. She didn't die from it.
No, again, you didn't hurt her. She hurt herself with her belief system.
Yeah.
Just like gay aunts didn't hurt her by just being herself. Your Nana is a bigot, and so because of that bigotry coming from Jehovah's Witnesses, she was hurt. I mean, if you're a racist and you're hurt by the presence of certain people, that's on you, not their existence. That's on you solidly. So,
she came to visit right before lockdown started, so she ended up staying for like a year because she couldn't fly home. Everything was shut down, so she lived with us for about a year. Things were really tough between my mom and John. Their marriage was completely falling apart, obviously. He had been sober for a couple of years, and then he started drinking again when they got to Texas and became a violent drunk. He started beating my mom while my sister was there and saw it. My mom's mental health bottomed out completely. She dropped Lily off with us one day and attempted suicide. And I frantically ran around town looking for her. I got in my car and I drove everywhere trying to find her. And I finally found her at a hotel. I got there right as the paramedics were there. And I remember getting out of my car and just falling to the ground and screaming because they wouldn't let me through and see her. Everybody was wearing masks. It was right in the middle of lockdown and they would not let me through. And I was just screaming, that's my mom. That's my mom. Please, I need to see her. That's my mom. Is she alive? And she ended up being an inpatient for a little while after that. And I think it helped her a lot. I think she really needed it. That was kind of a turning point for her and her mental health.
Your mom needs a lot of therapy and a lot of help.
Yes, she does.
Get away. I mean, I think this is an obvious statement here, but to get away, I mean, I would imagine like a thing where, especially if you said she was inpatient.
Mm-hmm.
So she's finally getting a break and getting away from all of the abuse and just the insanity. So she's got a chance to maybe be around some people who are trying to help her and to spend a little time on herself for a minute instead of running.
I really think she needed it. I think it helped her a lot.
Yeah.
At that point, my mom and my aunts cannot stand each other. There has always been animosity between the three of them. My mother is a middle child who was neglected by both of her parents and beaten by one of them. My youngest aunt was sick her entire childhood and beaten by my grandpa. And my eldest aunt was the only one that my Nana actually wanted to have. She only wanted one child. And my grandpa was very abusive toward them. And they all had a lot of animosity toward each other. So growing up, all I heard from my younger aunt was shit talking about my mom. From like the age of 6 or 7, she told me that my mom had been married 4 times. I knew that from a very young age because she told me. The only things I ever heard about my dad were negative. I was told that he was abusive and that his son was abusive. He had 2 children already when he and my mom met, which none of that was true. Now that I know him, I know that was not true. But my aunt that I was living with had serious problems with my mom and talked shit about her constantly, and I went along with it because I was mad at her because she stayed with John. I was mad at her for everything
she earned some good old shit talking, didn't she? I mean,
she did,
yeah,
but
she earned that.
I took my aunt's side in a lot of things, and I shouldn't have taken any side. I should have just stayed out of it and kept their drama between the 2 of them, but I didn't. I was young and impressionable.
I don't know how you could have done that at that age and in that situation. My goodness.
No, and I have always been caught in between them. Whenever there was drama between them, I was always in the middle of it, and I had to pick sides. And so I did that, and I picked the wrong side and made things even worse.
You're just a kid, and like you're feeling. I don't know if you're feeling this way as you're saying it, but it sounds like you're almost feeling a little guilty for your shit talking when, again, all of these people are abusive. All of these people are letting you down. And you, the victim, are the one feeling guilty, which is how the cycle repeats and why people return to their abusers, because they gaslight you into feeling guilty for a little shit talk over somebody who chose your abuser over you and discarded you and their other child in the process, conveniently staying with that. So you see, like, there's always this drawback to the abuser constantly, and we make excuses for them when they do. Like, I have compassion for people who repeat cycles because things that happen to them, and it is sad. I have compassion for them as long as they eventually really change, but a lot of times they give lip service to change while continuing the patterns and making you feel like crap when they're the ones hurting everybody. It's really sad. Oh, boo-hoo, you got shit talked when you did this. I mean, come on. Get over your fucking self. Where's your humility? Where's your ability to have empathy for the people that you're hurting and to own it? Like, there gotta be a lot more to it than that.
Well, and at the same time that all of this was going on, and my aunt and uncle were being very supportive of me, my aunt was also talking to John a lot. And John was lying to her about what was going on in their house, saying that my mom was drunk all the time, not him, and leaving Lily at home and doing all these dangerous things. And she believed him for some reason and called CPS. And mom had to deal with the whole investigation with CPS getting involved. And
well, I mean, I think CPS deserved to be at your house. I mean, but I don't know what really happened, but I think CPS deserved to be there at some point, probably.
At some point.
At least somebody checked in. I don't even care if it was over a made-up thing. At least somebody checked in at some point and put some people on notice.
Yeah, which, I mean, I think it stabilized things for a little bit there, but I mean, he went back to drinking and continued abuse. I moved out of my aunt and uncle's house at 19 with my girlfriend, and my uncle was very supportive, but my aunt was not. I did not tell her that I was moving out until a couple months before because she is nutso, and I knew that if I told her I was moving out, she was going to freak out. And my uncle figured it out. He figured out something was going on. And so I told him, and I said, please don't tell her. I'm not ready to tell her yet. You know how she's going to be. And he said, okay. And then she found out that he had known before she did and thought that we were conspiring against her. She eventually accused us of having an affair, which was really nice, because why wouldn't a 18-year-old who had just been molested sleep with somebody 20 years older than her? I mean, that makes sense. But she's crazy. She's genuinely crazy.
Carol Ann, you deserve so much better than all of this.
I know.
I hope you know this. I want to give you the biggest virtual hug. You deserve so much better than all of this. Ugh,
It's been a lot. But
That's a
I moved out on my own, and at that point, my mom started coming around, and she was incredibly supportive of me having a girlfriend, which I never thought she would be. That
well,
was
she
such
should
a
be.
shock.
Congratulations. That's what you're supposed to do. Good.
Yeah, that was such a shock. She helped us move and everything. I mean, and she spent time with both of us, and
Good. That's what parents do for their kids and their partners.
yeah, and I was shocked. I was so shocked that she did that. But it was at that time too that she had, after she got out of inpatient, she stopped going to the meetings. She would go occasionally because at that time it was virtual. So she would watch some of them sometimes. She went to Memorial for a couple of years, and to a couple of assemblies and conventions, but she stopped going regularly. And over the next few years, she has faded out. And now, like I said, they're celebrating holidays and birthdays and all that stuff. And then a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, John left my mom. They put Lily to bed, and then he told my mom, "I think we need a break," and left and did not say goodbye to my sister. Left in the middle of the night and moved in with a woman he had been seeing for a couple of years. Who had been friends with both of them, who had kids that were Lily's age, that she was around a lot.
I mean, are we surprised?
We're not.
I mean, after all, Carol Ann, he wasn't related to her, right? He wasn't related to her, so it's okay to do whatever he wants. I mean, this guy is just something else.
He is something else, and it's taken him leaving for my mom to finally admit that he is not a good father, because she stuck with that for years, that he was a good father to Lily, and he is not. He is way too hard on her. Like I said, she has ADHD and she's on the spectrum. She is in therapy now because of her abandonment issues and the trauma that she's been through, and he refuses to admit any of it. He refuses to even acknowledge that his daughter is on the spectrum. He refuses. He doesn't give
He's a
her her
criminal
medicine.
who molested your mom's daughter. I don't, at that point, he ceases to exist. Who cares if he acknowledges his daughter? Like, I don't want him to acknowledge Lily. I hope he fucks right off and never sees any of you guys again, and you all can go heal and have peace. You all try
They're
to get
co-parenting.
reason or love or anything good from him. Why? Go find it from people who are healthy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and they're co-parenting now after they got divorced. He is
yeah.
still with this woman who has two young kids, which is not good.
Does she know that he molests kids?
No, even if we told her, I don't think she'd believe it. I can't imagine the things that he has said about me, because I know she has questions. I know she has to wonder why he doesn't speak to his, ex stepdaughter. And I think about that too with Lily. She's going to wonder at some point. She's going to wonder why her dad doesn't talk to her sister.
Well, if anyone is ever desirous of doing so, you can always report.
Yeah.
I
have thought about it over the years.
how are and I look, I understand, especially as the victim, it can be very, very hard to totally get it.
It can be, and
Well, yeah, I understand.
a lot of it is really my sister. I think that if my mom had left him when it happened, she would have been okay, because she was only 3. I think I think losing a parent at 3, she would have been all right. But she is 8, and she has already gone through losing him once. And when she gets old enough to ask questions and old enough to understand, if she asks me, I'm going to tell her what happened, and she can make her own decision. But I'm not going to do that to her while she's so young.
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, well, yeah. I just, for me, I just, the reason I'm bringing it up is just the protection of other kids and anyone
Yeah,
else that this guy comes into contact with, right?
yeah. Because that's the thing. If
Lily,
he did it to me, he's probably done it to someone else.
of course he has. I seriously doubt that was the first time.
Well, and it was so creepy.
Calculated.
He used to tell me how much I looked like my mom. And I do. My mom and I look a lot alike. And I looked like the version of my mom that he originally fell in love with. And he told my aunt that he was in love with me. That was one of his justifications, is that he had fallen in love with me at
So it was okay
17 to 18-year-old.
what the hell is all these people? Why isn't anybody? Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I am, I'll just say I'm very sorry that that happened to you. And, I, uh, again, you deserve better than everyone that you have mentioned so far.
My mom has changed a lot in the last few years, especially since her divorce. She is a completely different person.
I hope.
She's raising Lily very different from how I was raised. She still works full time, but she spends as much time with Lily as she can. And she has a new boyfriend who is the first good one that I've ever seen. He is long distance, and they are taking things slow, which is good. I think that it needs to be taken a little slower.
Oh, for sure it needs to be taken slower, but what your mom needs is time to love herself. Because if your mom was ever from day one taught to love herself, she would have never put up with all of this bullshit for all of these
Exactly.
years and all of these abusive people. And your mom would have taught you guys to love yourselves as well, so that no one anywhere ever would have tolerated this abuse. It would have immediately been handled, and no one would have been in the none of y'all would have been in the cult. Like, it could have protected you all from so much, but
Yeah.
self-love is not what we're taught. We're taught to disown ourselves, to lead
Right.
ourselves like a slave
Yeah.
for other
We are
people in
unworthy.
Jehovah,
We
right?
get undeserved love, undeserved kindness.
Yeah, and yeah, undeserved kindness, right? Instead of grace. And you all deserve better than all of this. All of you do. And it's just so sad to watch the cycle
Yeah.
repeat. Please,
Yeah.
your mom's going to do whatever your mom's going to do, and it's her life to live. I just hope you work on loving yourself well, because you can't save other people. The only person you can save is yourself.
Yeah.
And they're adults, and they have to decide what path they want to choose.
Hmm.
You deserve so much better, and I don't know what your life will hold going forward, but if you love yourself well and you deserve to be loved just like everybody else, um, you'll not allow that kind of energy around you.
Right. And my life has changed a lot in the last few years. I lived in Dallas with my girlfriend for about a year, and then we moved to Oklahoma to be closer to her family. And then found out that she had cheated on me while we were still living in Dallas, so that ended. Um, but I met my husband in Oklahoma. We were working together, and our 1 year anniversary is actually coming up on the 17th. We'll have been married for a year.
Happy
Um,
anniversary! Happy early
thank
anniversary!
you,
Very cool.
thank you. Yeah, everything has changed. I have slowly been deconstructing everything that's still up there in my head. There are still some walls there.
Of course.
I still, during bad storms, I'll think, oh God, I was wrong. The Great Tribulation is here.
Well, yeah, I mean that you talked about social things, whatever, all of
Yeah,
these things come from that organization. And I mean, between all the things,
yeah.
you
Well, I've
deserve
been
a
in
chance to
therapy for a
break it
couple
all
of
down
years.
and to live a happy and healthy life and to break all the cycles. You have that chance.
Yeah, therapy has helped a lot with that. I've
Good.
been seeing the same therapist for about 3 years, and she has helped me tremendously. I didn't know until I started talking to her, but her husband was raised as a witness as well. So there's a little bit of common ground there. It's a small world.
If you're feeling stuck in your life after cult involvement and can't find the life you want, leaving a cult is a new beginning on a path to healing, not some magical end itself that is healing. Relief from the immediate pain feels good at first, but that's not necessarily true happiness. The feelings of social awkwardness and isolation, lack of self worth, perfectionism, patterns of being attracted to emotionally unavailable people, not even knowing who you are yourself. All of these things and more are lingering effects of that environment. Being in a cult isn't just following a doctrine, but it's following a culture, a way of life, a way of being that doesn't just go away because you stopped attending meetings. If you want to shortcut the path to healing instead of trying to figure it out on your own, maybe even work with me professionally in my cult recovery coaching practice, you can find opportunities to do that and also for other cool resources at my website, exjwhelp.com. That's exjwhelp.com.
Um, but that has definitely helped. I got my autism diagnosis from her finally, which explained so many things about when I was a kid. And the few family members that still talk to me, I've told them that I got diagnosed, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." I don't know why none of y'all saw this when I was a little kid, but at least they're seeing it now. Um, I don't talk to most of my family. I haven't spoken to any of my extended family in about 4 or 5 years. My aunt, my aunt that I was living with, the older one, like I said, she accused me of having an affair with her husband. They got divorced, and now she lives in California um, with my nana and with my other aunt and uncle. They all live in a like two-bed condo with each other. Um, I maybe talk to my nana once a month. I call her more often than that, but she typically doesn't pick up. If she does, she says, "I'll call you back," and then I don't ever hear from her. I try to keep in touch with her because she's getting older. She's 72, and I worry about her. If something happens, we need to know. She does not talk to my mom. She absolutely refuses to speak to my mother. Um, talk to my mom at all. She has very little family left. We have a little bit of family in Texas who are not witnesses. Like I told you before, my grandpa's sister, when his parents got divorced, was taken with his mom. They reunited many years later, and he actually lived with her for a couple of years after my grandma Grace died, and we all moved. And she made him get clean. She told him, "If you're going to live with me, you're going to get clean," and so he did. And that was about 5 years ago. And now she lives down in Texas, not far from my mom, with her daughter and son-in-law and their kids. So my mom gets to spend time with them pretty frequently. And like I said, my grandpa's up in St. Louis teaching. He's doing great up there. He's doing something that he's always wanted to do. But they're really the only family members that I have left. And the way that I have had to see that is that it's their loss. Everyone who doesn't speak to me anymore. I wish that I could share with them the life that I have now and how happy everything has made me. And it's their loss if they don't want to see it.
They don't deserve to see it.
They do. I would love to share it with them, but
I'm sure you'd love to. No, no. Well, maybe. Are you talking about the ones who were never Jehovah's Witnesses?
no, the ones who are and don't speak to
Okay.
me.
I'm just saying that the people who shun you don't really deserve to see
Yeah.
your good life. I mean, if they can't
Yeah.
handle you, if they can't love you for who you are, then they don't deserve the best parts of you. I
Yeah.
hope that someday they would get healthy, but
Yeah.
again, there's that mindset that they keep us yearning for them even though they're
Hmm.
abusive.
Yeah.
And
So that's the whole cycle of disfellowshipping.
well, it's the whole cycle of every type of abuse that you've mentioned thus far, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's all abuse. So the thing about abuse is that abusers are not abusive 24/7, right? So the people, and often, especially if it's family, we all just want to have family. But we kind of
Yeah.
tend to build an idealized version of people based on their highlights, their best moments, and we try to forget all the bad times because we're not really trying to feel that anyway, right? And so then we keep going back there hoping to get those best moments and just getting
Right.
slimed again every time because
Yeah.
they are who they are. And once somebody shows you who they are, believe them. But we don't want to believe that, right? We don't, you
That's that's how it's been with my nana. I've been able to let go of pretty much everybody else who has shunned me
it's
except for
tough.
her. And I think it's because she raised me. She was one of my parents, and
Sure.
that's really hard for me to let go of. It's why I keep trying to reach out, even if she rarely answers.
I
At
know.
least so I can get updates. I mean, see how she's doing.
Sure. And again, though, tremendous compassion for that, and I'm sorry for your loss because that's what this is
It
in a
is.
way. It's like trying to
That's
grieve the living, which is very weird,
Yeah. It
right?
is, and that's something I've struggled with a lot as I'm grieving my family, not just my blood family, but the family that I grew up around, the people in the congregation.
Right.
Like I never said goodbye to anyone. I wasn't planning on telling my mom that day that I didn't want to be a witness, but I did, and I never went to another meeting again. So I never said goodbye to anyone, and that stuck with me for a long time. That that was something I struggled with very heavily for a while.
Well, the lack
'Cause
of closure.
yeah, because they were my family. And I did write a couple of letters to a couple of people last year, maybe the year before, kind of explaining, my situation and where I am now. And I'm sorry I never said goodbye and never got any replies to any of them. But I did
Carol
my
Ann,
part.
you deserve better than all the people that you've mentioned thus far. Because I think, it's one of those things, right? When you've grown up in dysfunction and unhealthiness and abuse, you don't even know what healthy is or what it could
Yeah.
look like or feel like. And you're just wanting stability, and it can feel like stability because it's what you're accustomed to. But I hope that I know you've moved and so you're no longer, I guess, around any family, right?
Yeah, I was only a couple hours from my mom and my sister, which
Right.
I really liked. I liked being at that distance because I
Right.
could still go down there and see them. I talked to my sister, a couple times a week.
Good.
We
Good.
time and play games together. I talk to my mom every couple of days, and she's worried about me being so far away, and I worry about her not having much family around.
Sure. At the same time, you're all adults.
Yeah,
And as you continue to grow into your own,
mm,
I hope that you find people around you who can be the family that you never had. The
yeah,
people that truly, it's one of the things that I've got to experience on the outside is people who actually just like me for me,
yeah,
not because there's no obligation, like we're family and they
yeah,
feel like they have, no, they just actually care about me and they like to have me around because sometimes I can be all right to be with
yeah.
because I'm a pretty cool person and I have good qualities that people like. And that's a good thing to be able to say about oneself. And I'm proud that I can today because I used to hate myself.
Yeah.
And so to be able to really love yourself, to find people who love you like you love yourself, because the only relationship, Carol Ann, that you will have your whole life is your relationship with yourself. Everyone else will leave. They will die. They will move. Relationships change. But the only relationship you'll ever have that is for a lifetime is the relationship with self. And you just deserve so much better than what you've gotten this thus far. And I hope that as you keep moving forward and deconstructing and finding new things, I hope that you'll realize more and more. And I'm sure everyone that watches and listens to this, you were robbed, and you deserve a chance to have people treat you so much better. You really do.
And I have found those people. I left a lot of them behind when we moved, unfortunately, but we still keep.
That stinks.
My husband
rebuild, just like you built
my
those.
husband. Oh yeah, and my husband is the most long-suffering person that I have ever met. He puts up with all my crap. I have so much trauma and post-traumatic stress and all of these other things, and he just puts up with it like an angel. He supports me in everything that I do, and I've never felt that before. Even on days when I'm just being terrible, when I feel like crap and I'm acting terrible, he still comes up and hugs me and he tells me he loves me. It's very nice, and his family is very nice as well. While he was gone in boot camp and in training, they would have me over for dinner, once every week or two, and I get to spend time with them. And I have a little baby niece and nephew from them now that I've gotten to spend time with. And it's been good. It's been good. There's been a lot of good changes in the last few years.
I know you care for Lily deeply. As you think about or listen back to your own story when the time comes, imagine Lily going through that and what you would want for her, because we were raised to discount ourselves and to not to take what happened to us seriously. Sometimes it can help if we replace it with someone else that we do care deeply for, because we weren't taught to care for ourselves. And I think that when you listen back to this, you'll see you would want better for Lily. I think Lily would want better for you too. And
she has so much better. I love getting to watch her do things that I never got to do, like birthdays and holidays. I love that. It's great.
And birthdays and holidays are awesome, but you know what else is awesome? Somebody who's truly interested in you, who cares about you, who's curious about who you are, and who's supportive of who you are. And that's the stuff, that's love. That's the stuff that most of us really lacked in our lives. And that's the stuff that I wish for both you and Lily. And honestly, although there's a lot of people in this story that not super fans of in some ways. I hope at the end of the day, we're all better as humanity if everyone gets healing and everyone gets healthy and everyone starts to move forward in better ways, right? So even though there's some people here, not a super fan of Mr. John, and I think he might need to be somewhere else than a free man, but I hope that he finds healing. I hope that everyone there, because everybody here's in addiction, and whether it's to substances or this cult or to abuse and codependency and all of these things, your whole family just deserves so much better. And I think, Carol Ann, I don't know, maybe there's somebody else in the family, but it's you get to be the person to break the cycle and to move forward and to, I'm not putting pressure on you. I'm saying that as you go live your life and grow and be healthy, you'll be an example for anybody who's looking in your family for that beacon of light, because you get to shine yours forth, maybe probably for the first time, and hopefully they're drawn to that in a healthy way.
And my mom has been for sure. She tells me every time I talk to her how proud she is of me that I left
Good.
and that I did what she never did. And I've been telling her for the last couple of weeks that I'm doing the interview, and she's so excited to listen to it. She keeps telling me how proud she is of me that I'm actually doing it.
Well, I hope when she hears this, there's oh goodness, it's escaping me right now. She was like 12 or 13 when she was groomed, right?
Yeah.
By someone. There's a 12 or 13-year-old version of her, or maybe younger, coming from where she came
Yeah.
from. There's a little mama in there somewhere that she carries around with her daily, that is with her. And I hope that she gives that girl a chance too, to
Mhm.
heal, to have better, to love herself well, to where
Yeah.
she won't accept less anymore, and where she can also give herself a chance for the first time ever to probably find healing. And I love that she's celebrating holidays and all of that, and I hope she moves away from the JW thing. But more than that, there's just so much of the, it's not just the doctrines and the actions of like
Right.
holidays and stuff. I hope that she continues on her road of healing and
Mhm.
gets help if she's not
Yeah.
already, so that she can give that little girl inside of her a chance for the first time to finally run and be free, to play without judgment, to be vulnerable, find the right people to be
Mhm.
vulnerable and healthy with, so that she deserves a chance too. All of you
Yeah.
deserve a chance, and it sounds like none of you had a good one from the beginning.
No, we were all dealt a shit hand to start with, and
Yeah.
we've kind of made the best of it. I'm very proud to be one of the first ones to leave. I like that I can look at myself and go, I'm going to be the first generation out instead of
Yeah.
the fourth generation in.
Ooh,
Did
that's
I
it
find your
right
title?
there, right? Ooh, that's
Yep.
the quote for the episode, it was the, you were supposed to be proud of being the fourth generation in, but it's the first generation out.
Yeah.
That's where you can have pride, because you are breaking the cycle, and you deserve all the happy things. You deserve, the husband, I don't know, whatever it is you want in life.
Yeah.
And that's probably a road to figuring that out too, who you are and what you want.
It
But
is. It's
you
it's
deserve
tough
that
because
chance.
yeah, well, and like I want to go back to school and study something, but when you don't get the opportunity to look at that when you're in high school, it's hard to decide what you actually want to do when you're grown. So I'm like, I have no idea what I want to do with my life.
Well, and the only way you can figure that out is like, how do you know what kind of food you like? You have to try different types of food, right? If you just eat McDonald's all the time, there's a whole world of food out there you're missing. And
Yep.
so, you've got to try different things. And it's going to be as you get a chance to explore things, and I think love yourself enough to give yourself, again, giving your young self too, that is inside of you, the chance, to reparent that inner child, to give them a chance to actually get out and play, run and be free and explore and figure out what you want. You deserve that chance too. And
Yep. And
then
I'm taking it now.
good, good. Well,
Things are much better than they ever have been now.
I think anybody and everybody who listens will be proud of you, and the fact that you've tried to rise from the ashes of all of this, and that you're still here and fighting and doing the things. You're on a path, and it's not a quick fix. It's not, there's no magic pill. It's not, you study the knowledge book for 6 months and you now have the answers to everything that's ever happened, from the past to the present to the future
Yep.
forever. It's a journey, but as you go on it, and you engage with life and give yourself a chance, um, Carol Ann can have a great life
Yeah.
and be maybe
Yeah.
the first one in your family to have that.
I hope so. Well, and
Yeah.
I'll talk to my husband about this stuff too. I'll explain to him things that we did as kids and the witnesses, and he's just blown away that that was actually something that we did. And I mean, he's a Christian. He reads his Bible and believes very strongly. And I'll explain to him like doctrines that the witnesses believe, and he goes, "That's not right." I'm like, yeah, no, it's not right.
No, it's not. And yeah, you two have a good chance to grow together as well. I mean, again, happy first anniversary. You have plans or
We're boring people. We'll just probably eat dinner and then come home and play a game like every other day.
uh, do you enjoy that?
Oh yeah.
Well, then there you go, right? I mean, that's I think special moments can be nice when we want them to be at times, if
Right.
we want them to be, but it's the daily life. And if you just enjoy what you enjoy, not everybody wants to make a big deal out of everything. And I just love that you all if you have a life that's so happy you don't need to do something else, it's pretty cool.
It is. It's nice. It's nice. And he's one of the first people that's really taken an interest in the things that I'm interested in too. Like I've been obsessed with space when I was a kid, and 2 weeks ago he took me to a space museum, and I felt like a little kid again running through there. It was so exciting.
Aw.
And he's a huge history buff. He will go on 15-minute tangents about some random point in history, and I just stand there in awe that he remembers all of that.
Well, I love that the two of you found each other and seem to be happy, and I think I don't know his story, but you deserve to have love and stability and someone that really does. We all deserve it. Everyone deserves to find someone who takes an interest in them and cares about them and loves them for who they are, not just what they can get from them or to use them or because they share a belief system.
Abs-
Or even because it's blood. It's really special when you find somebody who just cares about you for you.
He puts
No
up with
other
all my
reason.
craziness.
Well, I think everyone has their own brand, right? So that's
Yeah, I put up with his too. So
that's fair. Well, Carol Ann, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really just want the best for all of you, and hope you continue to reach out and do the work. Don't run from it, and you'll find lots of good things for yourself.
absolutely. Thank you.
If you want to tell your story on the podcast, buy merch, or get more information, go to shunnedpodcast.com.